Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Underworld is over. Let us don our PVC formal wear.
The war itself had become more perilous. The weapons had evolved. But our orders remained the same. Hunt them down and kill them off, one by one.
They are the immortal damned. One family lusting for power and wealth.
The chain has never been broken, not in 14 centuries.
Another driven by revenge.
Soon we'll defeat the vampires on their own ground.
Do you see this human? He's attractive. I can't be positive, but I'm beginning to think the lycans are following him.
Hello, Michael.
Why are they after you?
Who are you people? You're in the middle of a war that's been raging for the better part of 1,000 years. A blood feud between vampires and lycans. Werewolves.
Andy, never has an Instagram plug been more well suited than today. Would you agree?
I would say that is very true.
First of all, if you wanted to learn about PVC formal wear and any other PVC wear, you would go to Instagram. I guarantee it.
That's where people go.
As you do.
Go for these things. Yes.
But what we are, but we actually happen to have a deep connection to Instagram and this movie and PVC formal wear. Would you like to talk about getting people over there?
People can head over to Instagram.com/thenextreel and they can see get all of their PVC formal wear needs met. Well, maybe not, but they can learn about all sorts of movies that we talk about on our podcast over on our Instagram page.
What do you have in your closet? What do you like to trot out from time to time when you want to feel special?
Generally, it's just my PVC lingerie.
It doesn't. It drapes. It drapes so nicely, wouldn't you say, because of the weight?
It's taut. Rather taut.
Yeah. Okay. Well, didn't need that, so let's do the show. Andy, Underworld 2003 kicks off the universe of Underworld with Kate Beckinsale, and it is a harrowing place and time where people can jump off buildings, and also werewolves and vampires don't like each other very much. Why did we decide to do this movie?
For quite a long time. One of the reasons, I suppose you could say, is because of Instagram, because we've done Instagram posts involving this film and this franchise before, and weirdly, people really like images from this franchise on Instagram. But really, I think we're really here because we just enjoy this world of werewolves and vampires and the gothic, the soap opera that it is. I think that's largely why we're here.
I would like to know, when's the last time you watched this movie before this week that you watched this movie? It
would have been probably opening weekend in the movie theater. So 2003.
Seriously?
I've only seen the first two, and it was when they opened in the movie theaters, and haven't seen them since.
And your memory of this movie is good enough that you wanted to come back and do a series of all 5, including 3 you've never seen, that are late in the series.
I'm curious about them. I'm very curious about the rest of this world, and it's like the Resident Evil films. You go into it going, you know what? These are fun movies. As it progresses, they may decline in quality, but that's not going to stop me from still finding enjoyment in them.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So would you agree that you still found enjoyment this time around?
Absolutely. Oh, I love this world. I think that what the filmmakers here created, it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of this, like I said, it's this kind of gothic, over-the-top soap opera involving vampires and werewolves that I really just have a wonderful time being in. I think that walking through it with Selene and all of the drama involving Michael, this human, and then you've got Lucien on the side of the werewolves and Victor on the side of the vampires, and then you have Craven, and it's just, like I said, it's a soap opera. It's like who's stabbing who in the back, and oh my, there's secrets that come out about what Victor actually did. And I don't know. I really think it's a lot of fun. I have a great time just digging into this and just being a part of this world, just like Ariel said.
I do too.
They needed mermaids. That's what they needed in here too.
Yeah, but the siren kind, the kind that
the ones that were face. Like that. Yeah, that where was that horror, like that Polish horror movie with those?
I think that was Sirens. I think that was Sirens. Wasn't that Sirens? Yeah. Those are the ones I'm looking for. Let me tell you, that was. I think that it's fascinating, and I did want to talk just briefly about this whole thing with werewolves versus vampires, right? Because growing up, I did not have a sense that vampires and werewolves were, arch enemies the way they exist in popular culture now. it turns out that's always been a thing. But I'm curious for you as a kid, when you first saw these movies like, Dracula versus werewolf or Wolfman, what was your sense of understanding the relationship between vampires and werewolves?
I don't think I ever had any sense of that. Like, I never saw Dracula Meets the Wolfman. Like, the depth of my exploration of kind of those universal classic horrors is generally the first film, other than Bride of Frankenstein.
Sure.
I generally haven't gone to see Son of the Wolfman, The Wolfman Returns, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Like, I just haven't dug into all of those. Again, it's kind of like, the return on your investment tends to diminish over time with those. So I've kind of missed a lot of those, but it doesn't mean I'm not curious. And I know that Universal had gone through and had done a bunch of these, Dracula Meets the Wolfman. I think they did the Wolfman versus Dracula. And so I think that there were a bunch of these sorts of films that just allowed for monster battles. And I think that's what people have fun with. And so the whole idea of the versus sort of thing, I mean, Predator 2 kind of spawned that a little bit in the cinematic world when it showed the skull of the alien on the Predator's ship trophy wall. And then we get the Alien versus Predator films, and then we have Freddy versus Jason. And so the idea of these battling mythical creatures, I think it's been around, and people just love the idea of pairing different creatures with each other just to kind of throw them at each other and see what happens. And so I think the idea of the way that the trio of our writers kind of developed this story, I think that, clearly they're fans of the genres and had a lot of fun kind of creating something unique with it by playing with tropes within each of them. I thought they did a good job, and I think that the way that they combine these two worlds works really well.
I think so too. It's interesting to me because some of what I learned about vampires and werewolves, I learned from Underworld, right? And go back and read some of the literature and background on this and find that there's a fascinating tie. The deal with vampires and werewolves, before the end of the 19th century, it was the Greeks that actually believed that the corpses of werewolves, if not destroyed, would return to life as vampires in the form of wolves or hyenas, some other sort of dog creature. Yeah. And
really?
They would prowl the battlefields and drink the blood of dying soldiers. And, some say that the sort of culture of vampires and werewolves, like they both have relationships with day and night cycles, right? Vampires can't do anything during the day. They're most powerful at night, but they're also completely lucid. And werewolves can do all they want during the day as humans, but they lose complete control at night in the moon, the full moon, et cetera. They lose control and identity. The corpse vampire sort of werewolf thing, I think, is really fascinating. In Eastern Europe, there's a belief that werewolves become vampires when they're killed and not disposed of properly, like they're almost vampires and they just didn't quite get over the hump, and they end up being these crazy wolf creatures. But it wasn't until sort of these movies that they start adding the cinematic kind of a tie between these two species of monster, and Underworld sets up that it was the werewolves that were, slaves of vampires, the daylight keepers of vampires. And I think that's a really interesting take on the mythology. I think that's really fascinating. So, what Underworld does is take a lot of, like so many great monster movies, is they take these great sort of historical threads and mythological threads and tie them all together in a new kind of take on the shape, the gestalt of vampires and werewolves. I really like it. And then Twilight just goes and levels up the whole relationship between werewolves. And they
I didn't even bring that one up.
Yeah, teen melodrama, right? And so and make it a romance and do the whole Romeo and Juliet thing, very much the way sort of this movie kind of steps on those tails a little bit. So it's interesting now that it feels more, at least in cinema, it feels like werewolves and vampires are kind of inextricably tied, and that's relatively recent.
I think that it's interesting when you have some fans of genre films like the three people who worked on the story here, Len Wiseman, Kevin Grevioux, and Danny McBride, who clearly have a passion for the genres and then kind of create this world that it just kind of has really kind of taken off, and there's quite a bit of it. I just think it's fun to see what people can do with these. I mean, there are times where I feel like I look at the original stories of Dracula, for example, or I guess I've never read any Wolfman sorts of stories, but like the original Dracula, there are times where I just really prefer kind of the classic way that that original story was told. I really like that, but I also just love watching people play with them. I just think it's just they just allow for a lot of fun.
Yeah, truly. And this is definitely a movie of passion. People who made this movie really love investing in this world, clearly, and. So let's talk about the movie. What'd you think? Did you love some opening low-hanging fruit subway violence?
Well, I mean, it's just the movie kicks off and you instantly have this gothic feel and you have these camera angles in this dark world. And then you have this moment where as Selene and this other vampire are kind of they're on the watch for something. They're looking at, we don't know yet what they're watching, but we realize they're watching for these werewolves that they're tracking. And then you have the two of them leap off it's like some cathedral that they happen to be in, something like that. And that kicks us off with just straight up coolness.
So cool.
Because the way that Selene lands, it's like she lands like she jumped off of a
bench.
3-foot thing. Yeah, just a bench. She just kind of lands with complete grace. There's no sense of all of that momentum that she had or anything. It's just completely cool, just the way she lands and then just instantly is walking.
Why is that so great? Like the physicality of that move is, why is that weird? I mean, it's about 3 seconds and it totally sticks with me. Like for 20 years, I remember that jump. That jump is amazing for both of them.
Yeah, I mean, those are the sorts of things that I think Len Wiseman, who up to this point had been, I mean, he started working in the art department in films back in the 90s, like big films like, I can't remember now, Godzilla, lucky guy, Independence Day, Stargate. So he'd been working as a prop guy or doing some storyboards with before and then worked in the art department on those films. And so I think that coming from that world, and then he went into like music videos and that whole side of things and commercials. And so you get a real visual sense in those worlds. And I think that he just, instantly was able to understand that, playing with the visuals and creating those iconic moments, those were going to be key elements to parts of his world here, because it's not just that moment. I mean, we have a lot of moments consistently throughout the film where you have these kind of just things that Selene does. It's generally Selene, but sometimes it's some other people. And it's just like, oh, that is just a moment. That was a movie moment, and it becomes a trailer moment, and then it's just a moment that you just don't forget.
Yeah, 100%. This is, I think he has a real eye for certain visual, physical sort of treats like that. I think another one later in the movie, which I know we'll get back to, is werewolves running on walls, opposite walls at the same time. Very cool physical effect. It looks great. It's threatening. It's just wonderful. Those things, I think this is a guy who does that will absolutely drive a car into a helicopter later.
Absolutely. I did question, like, that was one thing that I did question. I'm like, wait a minute. So are the werewolves running on the walls and the ceiling? Or are they just like so like physically like able that if they need to, they can run on the walls and the ceiling by gripping them just really hard?
Oh, it's gripping hard.
Is that okay? That's you're 100% convinced of that. Because I was like, I'm not 100% sure.
You think there was some sort of like magic that they're at work? They've altered gravity.
I don't know, because all of a sudden they're all just like on all the walls. It's like aliens skittering across things.
That's exactly what I imagined. Like they just hold on to like pipes in the drywall and stuff, pipes and frames.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they did it well.
Yeah. Which actually leads us to other architecturally defying feats. And early on we get the big escape where Selene shoots the hole around her in the floor and falls to the floor below. Which also brings us another great landing from a height on behalf of Selene, and a great effect that, as it turns out, is as possible as werewolves running on the walls and ceiling in real life.
This was proven where?
Well, we brought this up on the SatMat a long time ago, and Steve actually pointed us to the Mythbusters episode where they built a rig to test this move, where you're standing on the floor and you have two handguns, and you even big handguns like Selene has, and you spin around in a circle and you shoot the floor, thus perforating the floor around you, and then the floor in a big circle falls to the floor below. And they did this, and it took so many bullets as to be largely ineffective to do it. And they were shooting it with all kinds of different guns, and they just could not make it work. They could not make it work, and they definitely couldn't make it work with the finesse, the grace that Selene does it in this movie. It is a great Hollywood effect that has been tested false.
Screw them. It just looks cool.
It looks so good. Yeah.
It looks cool. And, you hit that point in movies like this. You have werewolves, you have vampires, people are leaping off of cathedral tops and landing perfectly fine. I just don't care. I hit a point with this where I'm just like, I'm here because it's cool. What they're doing is cool. It doesn't make sense. But in context of the world that I'm watching in this movie, the world building works because everything that is being displayed makes sense in this space.
I like to believe,
zero problem with it.
I like to believe that vampires and werewolves can actually, on demand, change their mass. And so when they need to jump off of cathedrals, they're very light and hit the ground very light. But when they need to shoot holes through floors, they can be very heavy and assist.
Well, they can turn into bats.
You heard it here.
Although we never see that in this franchise. But presumably, maybe that's what it means. Like they fly, they're as light as a bat.
They're as light as a bat, or heavy as a thing that would fall through a floor. So there's the vampires werewolves bit, and I think they look good. Can we talk about the wolf change? Because so much, the vampires, they have their teeth and they struggle a lot, and there is in terms of physical effects, there are some great pieces of like the silver nitrate going into the blood vessels. So we get some really fun skin effects. I think the standout effect is going to be the one where we get the werewolf change, and we watch them. We watch their faces and bones grow and change and shift, and they do some really cool effects going inside the body and watching the rib cage expand and the heart change. And they do this on both sides, I guess, vampires and werewolves. And on the vampire side, there's like cobwebs in there, and looks very scary. What do you think of all these change effects that they lean on so heavily in this movie?
I think, and the vampire, I don't think that's completely accurate, because the one time when we do go in, it's generally when they're reanimating the kind of the 1,000-year-old slumber of like Victor or somebody. So obviously,
there are cobwebs inside their heart.
Of course there are cobwebs. Exactly. Where else would spiders
You brought me
go?
around.
What else do they do in that space?
Yeah.
But it's not like we go inside Selene to see her transform and she has cobwebs because she's a vampire.
No, right.
Nothing like that. I'm just clarifying the point here.
Right.
I really like those effects. And yes, now the CG is a little dated as far as being able to tell.
But did it take you out of the movie?
It didn't. And they moved through it quickly enough where I'm like, I'm just buying into all of this stuff that's happening. I just think it works effectively. It's quick. They move, and it allows for a lot of fun to happen through all of those transformations. And yeah, it's generally the werewolves. And I really am. I mean, I'm a fan of werewolf transformations that are physical, like watching American Werewolf in London, or
very much what this felt like. I mean, you could tell this was an homage.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But watching those physical effects, the way that they actually do that, I mean, there's something to them that makes them work so incredibly, incredibly well. Watching this, though, like I felt like there was this real rapidity to it that just worked really well for me, and it allowed for, as they're like even coming out of it, like after the what basically felt like a bum fight or a fight club sort of thing going on in the subway. You see them. They're almost like close to being completely transformed, but not quite. And you can still kind of see some of it lingering. And I liked the way that they allowed for that. I just thought that that's one of the benefits of CG is you can kind of have those sorts of things linger and just kind of play around with it as needed. So I thought that they were effective.
This is an interesting movie in regard to the series we just finished. The Aquatic Killers.
Aquatic Killers.
Because we got ourselves a selection of movies that were at that crossroads of, CG and mechanical and, visual effects, practical effects. Thinking specifically of Anaconda, where we both had trouble with the collision of brand new CG technology and old effects, practical effects running into each other, and it didn't always look great. I think is fair.
Yes.
Gentle, delicate, but fair. I think we're at a point here, 2003, where we know with the benefit of hindsight that, obviously the effects are going to get better. But this movie, never once did the effects take me out of the experience of enjoying the movie. Not like Anaconda. Like we got over that hump of completely unbelievable effects, visual effects, CG visual effects, to storytelling, immersive storytelling effects used extensively, and it was right in this period right here. And I think Underworld hits the bullseye on that. I mean, great effects. They work for me almost every time. Like I can't think of a time. I say almost every time. That is absolutely disingenuous. I can't think of a time when the effects just didn't work for me or took me out of the story at all. I think it was just it was really solid.
Yeah, I suppose the only time it might have a little bit for me was, I don't know. It was around the point where I think it might have been less the werewolves and more Victor when she's trying to wake him up and we're getting that cobwebby inside. That might have been a point where I was like, it's a little more fake here. Mm-hmm. But but in the end, I think that you're largely right. I think watching this ends up just providing a lot more enjoyment. And it could just be the pacing. It could be that it's coming from Len Wiseman, who was straight from the world of music videos, mm-hmm. and definitely has that sort of the pacing and storytelling style with his work. So I suppose that could be part of it.
We have two different versions of this movie.
Right.
And I think we each watched a different version of the movie.
Yes, we did. I watched the original theatrical cut, and you watched the, quote, unrated cut, which from reading about it doesn't sound like it's that unrated. It just sounds more like it's an extended cut. I think that it's definitely a marketing tool that they use to say unrated. Sounds like it's got a lot more naughty bits in it.
I get, yeah. This was not a naughty bits experience. If you're looking for that, this isn't the movie to look for. It just felt
not just naughty bits,
longer.
but more blood, all that sort of stuff. Like anything that gets cut, because if it says unrated, generally it means, hey, this we had to really cut out some gore and all that sort of stuff, and it was just too much. But really, it really wasn't that much from what I've read.
Well, it wasn't that much, and I think in this case, unrated literally means they never got this cut rated. Like they just didn't do the practical process. Somebody didn't check a box and they decided to release it. We get much more just alternative footage, alternative takes. We get Selene studying more books. We get a slightly longer like historical vantage. I think we get a little bit more context in the original battle between Craven and Lucian, and what they used to, how they used to live together. We got we get some.
There's more Erica and Craven. Like there's more of an actual relationship between Erica and Craven.
Yeah,
that's one thing I understood.
Yeah, they do. And I think, do they, in the original cut, is there the scene where she, they start making out and he starts biting her?
Nope.
Yeah, so there's that scene, and it's not a particular. It's a weirdly like non-erotic sequence that is interrupted. Many, in key key moments. But it doesn't really add to. I can see why it was cut. Like I don't think this unrated cut is a beneficial cut. To say that this is something to celebrate. It's just an alternative view with some extra stuff in it.
Yeah, that was largely my understanding. Is from what I found online, that it says that there were 42 differences. Most of those were additional scenes. Yeah. They were rather small, like 26 additional scenes, just like little tiny things of bits and pieces here and there. 3 scenes were extended in the theatrical version. There were 5 scenes with alternative footage, and then 8 extended scenes. So,
it's fine. It's fine. But what we're really showing up for, there are the 2 romances in here, right, with Erica and Craven, and she is, largely, I think, manipulative. And, we get that at the very end where she, throws the keys to Selene and says, "Why are you helping me?" "Well, I'm not. I'm helping myself." Well, that's okay. That's good. She's not she's not a sort of critical character in the movie. She's like a manipulator, but what we're really here for is the story between Selene and Michael. And how well do you think they handle that in the scope of this sort of Romeo and Juliet story?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but before I answer that, I just want to make sure that we're not downplaying the fact that, some of these characters, like there will be some. I'm curious to see how all of this plays as we get into the next 4 films.
True.
Like we have 4 more films to go, so I'm like, is there going to be more of Erica? Is there going to be more of this power play between her and Craven? Like, is Craven even going to be around? What's going to really be going on?
Well, it is interesting because
curious.
This is not like Piranha 2. Where nobody comes back from Piranha, right? Or nobody comes back for Lake Placid versus Anaconda,
we have a lot of people returning over the course of this franchise. Just looking at it, there's also an animated, like a series of animated bits, and a lot of these people, even their characters, I should say, come across those. So as we go, we will be looking and seeing who kind of continues on.
I should say there is one special effects scene that I think is very, very cool in the extended cut that it surprises me that they cut, and that's Victor's awakening. And he wakes up and I wonder if this is, let's see, when did The Matrix come out? 99. This was like a direct pull from The Matrix. Like he gets up and he has all the tubes attached to him. And so the whole scene is him. He has all these tubes and he's he's disconnecting from and I couldn't help but think of the Matrix and waking up in the jelly donut bath.
Cool.
And that's his whole stand. It's a great sequence, and it's a great introduction to Victor the old. I mean, his makeup was great, in the just like when he could just start moving again, and he was all. What they did to Bill Nighy is extraordinary, and so it was really fun. And I think it's a miss not having that particular sequence in the movie to see what they did to him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it is one of those bits, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's one of those where as I watched it, I'm like, do I feel like I'm missing? Because it's like 12 minutes. I mean, it's a decent amount of footage. Like, was I feeling like I really missed any parts? And I don't really feel like I was. But I guess what will be curious for me is as we continue this franchise, hearing from you if you feel like there were some particular moments that happened. That you like, I like having this scene here because it was a nice play on everything going on between Craven and Erica or something like that, So anyway, but as far going back to your original question, though, I think Selene's great. And I find her fascination with Michael to be pretty interesting and kind of this draw that she has to him. And like right out of the gate when she sees him in the subway and is kind of drawn to him and she doesn't know why and why are also she's curious because she sees the lycans, I should say, following him. And so is very curious as to why they are doing so. I find them really interesting. And Michael, Scott Speedman, especially the way that he plays it, like he works well as the newbie entering this world. Like, what the heck is going on with all this craziness that's getting thrust upon him, right? Where he's just suddenly thrust directly into the middle of this war that's waging between vampires and lycans. And as it turns out, it's because of his bloodline. And I find that to be really interesting and the way that plays out. And I think he actually handles it well, the way that he kind of goes along with that and connects with Selene and finds that person to kind of have that moment with and just kind of connect to. So I thought it worked really well. So
I did too. I really like Scott Speedman, and as it happens, I mean, he's a busy guy. He's working a lot, but as it happens, don't cross paths with him. The stuff that I watch after this, and I watch the XXX movies, and so. But then I don't watch the stuff that he's in anymore, and so he's been in a whole bunch of stuff. I missed The Strangers. I missed Good Neighbors, Citizen Gangster, Last Resort, the show. October, it's just nothing. He was and he did a guest spot on Grey's Anatomy in 2018. I stopped watching Grey's Anatomy before that. 25 episodes on Animal Kingdom. Didn't watch that show.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. And he's got 10 episodes. He's in the show You coming up in 2021. Like, he's a busy guy. It's not like he just disappeared like some other actors. And so, it's very strange because I feel like he's a guy who should be in stuff that I like based on this movie.
I have seen very few things with him. My Life Without Me may be one of the few things that I really remember him from, and I thought he was fantastic in that. That was a kind of an indie drama that he did in the same year, actually, as this. Other than that, and this follow-up to this, like, I missed The Strangers, and that's one that seems right up my alley.
Totally.
I don't know how I missed it, but yeah, I just... I like watching him. I think he's kind of an interesting actor to kind of see, but right. I have seen very little of his.
Yeah. So I feel like he was great in this movie as that guy, and we'll see him again.
This is the sort of nonsense, I guess you could say, that sometimes you end up finding on IMDb. Under the trivia section, it says, "Good friend of Kate Beckinsale and Len Wiseman. Often attends barbecues at their Los Angeles house." So there you go.
Well,
and then it says, as Miss Beckinsale stated during an interview on The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien, she said, After making Underworld, we adopted him as a sort of pseudo-family pet. We stroke him and feed him, and it's good for him. So...
Oh, Scott.
So
he does kind of look that way, don't you think? Like he does kind of look
well,
like he could use to be pet and brushed and groomed occasionally.
When he's the blend of the lycan and the vampire at the end of this film.
I imagine him lying down in front of their fireplace. Somebody will sit down, crisscross applesauce with a brush and just brush his hair. Okay, well, that's got to... we haven't then talked about Selene, Kate Beckinsale.
Dear Kate, yes. Dear Kate. What an interesting kind of turn for her career at this point. She first appeared, and where I first saw her was Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing. That was her first film appearance.
Right.
And then she went on to appear in a number of smaller types of films, a lot of different indie films, and a lot of just films that I look at, I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting kind of start to her career. Nothing seems like she's going to go down this road. I mean, she's working on things like The Last Days of Disco with Whit Stillman, who she returns to later, and some other kind of indie films. Broke Down Palace, she appeared in. Pearl Harbor, then she went big in Hollywood, Pearl Harbor and Serendipity in 2001, and Laurel Canyon in 2002, another indie film. And then there's this in 2003. It's like, well, there's a big change for her career trajectory. And Stephen Sommers, who was doing Van Helsing the very next year, wanted to cast her, but was afraid she wouldn't be interested because she was in this. But she saw the script and was like, oh, totally sign me up. And so it seemed like she really enjoyed the shift and the change from those other types of films. And as her career has moved forward, certainly she's done quite a number of Underworld films. We're going to be talking about them. But she's also done a lot of other types of films and has always kind of, I suppose, really done well at dancing across those lines of effects heavy films and kind of just the smaller indie films or just kind of non-genre Hollywood films.
There are a number of articles that pop up when you search for Kate Beckinsale, and they're all like, why doesn't Kate Beckinsale work anymore? And what they're really saying is, why isn't Kate Beckinsale in any more Underworld movies? Because she's working a lot. Like, she's a busy actor, and she just is not in the movies that you like. She's like your Scott Speedman. People who think that she's your Scott Speedman.
I do find that telling. You see that sort of thing pop up quite a bit on these clickbait articles. Why is so and so not working anymore? It's like, well, they really are working. It's just they've shifted their career path, and now they're doing a lot of independent films, a lot of smaller projects, a lot of more interesting TV,
video game voiceover work. She's Queen Arryn of the Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah, I really enjoy her career. I thought she was fantastic in Love and Friendship.
What about Total Recall? How'd you feel about her in Total Recall?
I didn't care for that film that much. And I don't think it's just because I have kind of a special place in my heart for the original one, which I certainly do. I just felt like they took it in some odd directions, and it just, I don't know, I just didn't find that it really worked as well for me as the original version did.
Yeah, I think so too. I had a little bit of trouble with it. She was great.
I thought she was fine. Honestly, I don't remember much of her, but I know she was kind of like the evil wife, right?
Yeah, she was. But I mean, come on, Kate Beckinsale and Jessica Biel, and Colin Farrell, hunky Colin Farrell.
Yep.
How bad does a movie have to be not to have an okay time?
Hey, it's still at a 6.3 on the IMDb scale, so yeesh.
All right. Well, whatever you're going to do. So we like Kate Beckinsale. I think she's fantastic in this part. I think you're right. She has a real natural sensibility at dancing across the rails, so to speak, and not getting burned. I mean, she's just she's a terrific chameleon, and she's great. Obviously, she became an action figure level iconic in this movie. Thanks to, production design and costume design, character design. And I think they just did so much great work to give her something that she could really inhabit in terms of a fantastical creature, and I think she was. I think she just nailed it.
Well, and obviously Len Wiseman clicked with her. I mean, they would go on to shortly after get married after this. And I think that he knew how to shoot her in a way that worked really well for the concept of the film. And because it had to have that same level of coolness all the way through. And she carried it to an extreme. And it just like the visual coolness all the way through. It's just, I mean, even down to her final swooping move that she does when she attacks Victor at the end. It was
well, that's the victorious angel pose, right? I mean, that's like winged victory, where she has one knee up and her arms out and the sword is out, and it's an iconic pose. And not to mention the incredibly solid effect as Victor's head is bisected.
Straight out of Cube.
Yeah, right? It's terrific. It looks great. And I love that they give him a beat longer to kind of show his rage before things fall apart.
Before realizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, Bill Nighy, I mean, he's another actor that it's just like, it's so strange to see him pop up in things like this, but he does it well. And Michael Sheen, same thing. Like, you know, and this was, I think, the film where, because she had been with Michael Sheen up to this point and then, you know, changed teams, as it were, and hooked up with Len a little bit after this. And so it's just one of those weird things. But I mean, they'd go on to kind of continue working together in the franchise for a bit. So, I don't know. I just feel like they really cast it well. All of the faces work well. I just have to say Reyes, played by co-story writer Kevin Grevue, possibly has the deepest voice I've ever heard.
Yeah, man, he can just turn it on. He was great.
I'm like, that's like, I need to really kind of, boost my my bass and just really let that rumble the house every time he speaks.
Yeah, you do. I think, speaking of great characters, here's one we don't see very long, but actually, for me, wins the title of having a better name in real life than the character name in a movie full of interesting character names. The part of Amelia is played by Zita Gorog, which sounds like a made-up name for this movie, and I am here for it. I think it's great.
Yes. Yeah, she dies very fast, unfortunately.
But it's interesting because they do that high, like, security cam angle on her and her team in the train, and that, like, that still frame is everywhere. Like, she gets, like, pride of placement because she looks cool, the team looks cool, the production design looks great in the train, and the camera is perfect on her.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And Bill Nighy and her, so we've seen two of the three, I can't remember what they call them, but the big leaders, right?
Yeah, the ancients.
And I think both of them carry that title well. Like, she's got this just classical kind of beauty about her in that moment. I think she works really well. And Bill Nighy, of course, is Bill Nighy. So I'm curious. I can't remember what the other one's name is.
Marcus Corvinus. So he was the one who was supposed...
The other of the line.
Right. So he was the one who was supposed to wake up. Victor was supposed to stay down. And Amelia was coming to sink, right? Because she's the one who was on duty for this last 100 years, and they were going to swap. That's important to know, because that mechanic is a little bit shaky in terms of, it can get lost in the story.
Well, and that's just all a part of this kind of soap opera element of it, right? Because and trying to keep track of all these different elements. And I want to make sure, as we watch this whole franchise, that I'm keeping in mind, okay, who's on whose sides, because we have Craven as a terrible kind of leader of the vampires, while
a traitor.
Amelia, and it turns out he's a traitor, but while Amelia's in another part of the world, he's kind of heading up this little pack here. And we find out that he's actually a traitor. And so Selene raises Victor from his crypt 100 years before she's supposed to. And then we find out that Victor's really not that great of a guy, and that he had actually done some horrible things in his past. And that, one, he's really the reason behind this war with the lycans in the first place. And two, that he actually killed Selene's family and is, and then posed as this great guy who saved her. And so it's so soap operatic, but I just really enjoy the way that the whole thing plays. It's this very enjoyable kind of vibe that they create for us.
Yeah, it is a great vampire telenovela. You almost never want it to end.
Totally is. No, right. I know it is. It does remind me when I was down in Brazil, there was actually a telenovela, although I can't remember what they called it, but it was called Vamp.
Yeah.
And it was a soap opera with vampires, and it totally works.
Yeah.
And that's because there's something about kind of the gothic nature of that storytelling that just falls in line really well with kind of everything going on in the way that these worlds kind of play. So it works well. And this cast eats it up. Yeah. I think they do a great job with it.
Every bite. You want to talk a little bit about getting it made?
Well, we talked about the three co-story writers. Len...
And let me just say, to clarify, it's not the Danny McBride you're thinking of.
It's not the Danny McBride we're thinking of. It's a different Danny McBride. Yeah. Len and this Danny McBride met through their agent. They hit it off because they were both big lovers of genre films. And Len, he came to the attention of Skip Williamson, who is the president of Lakeshore Records, and because he had worked on the music video for Rufus Wainwright, and Williamson thought he was so good, and so he pushed for Lakeshore to look at Underworld, and so they did, and that's kind of how this whole thing came to be. And actually, Len Wiseman, because he had this art background, he said that when he was pitching the script, he did 12 detailed production drawings, which the producers later said made them feel more comfortable about going with a first-time director. So there's something to be said about having that kind of that skill, that mad set of skills in your pocket.
Mad skills?
That's right. Hey, I can't sketch fantastic production drawings.
Okay.
I'd like to see you try.
No, I can't. I just don't. My skills, as you say, are not mad.
They're not. Okay.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Tony Pierce Roberts behind the camera.
I mean, obviously, this is a world-building film. Len Wiseman and his writing team. I mean, Len Wiseman, actually, he had to come to this with a full vision in mind. And then coming to a cinematographer like Tony Pierce Roberts, you're going to have these conversations right out of the gate. How do we need to light it? How do we need this place to look? Because he's going to have to really work to kind of do that from beginning to end. And I mean, I think there's just so much darkness throughout. And obviously, you watch this is a film that had some serious color treatments added to it afterward. But I think that it just makes for a beautiful, dark, kind of this gothic other world that I think, it's right there in the title. It's this underworld that we kind of get to watch the whole time. I find it incredibly well crafted in the cinematography vein.
I also find that Tony's skills are mad. He was a Merchant Ivory guy for a long time, and he's actually behind some of my very favorite, I would say my favorite Merchant Ivory film, which was A Room with a View, which was fantastic. It makes my heart sing, that movie, Andy. Do you remember A Room with a View?
I don't know why we haven't done a Merchant Ivory series.
We have not done a Merchant Ivory series. We absolutely do that, because that would allow us to talk about a very young Helena Bonham Carter, spry Denholm Elliott and Maggie Smith, and of course Julian Sands as George Emerson. Goofy Julian Sands. I love that movie. I love it.
I think that's what they said. Let's get him. He's goofy.
He's goofy, and that Denholm Elliott is still spry. Let's get him before he's not spry anymore.
For me, it's all Simon Callow. Mr. Beebe.
Hello, Mr. Beebe.
It's all Simon Callow.
He's
that one,
great. Daniel Day-Lewis. Don't forget Danny Day. Danny on the DL.
Well, at this point, I just assume he's kind of in everything.
He's actually in Underworld. He plays
right.
he plays a gargoyle. He's very in character.
So Tony Pierce Roberts, I mean, he worked on a lot of those, and but I mean, he worked on a lot of other things too. He played, all over the place in the types of films he did early on. He did a Stephen King adaptation, The Dark Half, and he did some things like The Client and Disclosure, everyone's favorite.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Andy. The guy is incredibly versatile. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang to be able to do that, and his most recent production, it's like The Circle is now complete. The young adult Vampire Academy.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Why we haven't done a series? We just need to do a teen vampire movie, I guess.
Yeah, we could totally do that.
Get Buffy in there. I see we can finally get Buffy.
I would love to get Buffy in there.
Buffy and the Vampire Academy.
Yeah, that's it.
There's got to be others.
And you know what? Heathers, because they were social vampires.
Oh, okay. I see.
You see? We're gonna actually take vampires, a metaphor for something, and make them a metaphor for something else.
That feels meta.
It's why you tune into this show.
It really is.
And don't forget Dinotopia. Oh, he did Dinotopia too. Oh, he's kind of incredible. And Doom, versatile filmmaker. This Tony. Doom. Doom. You haven't made it until you've done a rock feature, and I think he's the guy who coined the term.
Was the Rock in Doom? Gosh, I totally forgot that.
Doom. We should find a way to get Doom on there. It's got our favorite things. Rosamund Pike went on to do great things from there. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Carl Urban, Andy, Carl Urban, and it could be.
Wow.
We could do a series from Doom to Dread. What?
Wow.
Why aren't you more excited about this?
Was in it. Wow. I don't know. I feel like actually I saw like a scene of this or something. Like it was on, I was in a hotel and it was on and I watched like a scene and I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't really need to see any more. I feel like that's where I am with this one. But sure, if you want to build a video game adaptation series or a Carl Urban series or whatever, you go right ahead. Production design, Bruton Jones? Breton? I'm not actually hearing how you say that name.
A lot. Production design carries a lot of weight on this movie, clearly.
And costume design, Wendy Partridge. I just feel like this movie, paired with cinematography and obviously effects work. I mean, it's the well-designed film, and they bring a lot to the table.
Now, I know, we haven't talked about Paul Haslinger in forever. Behind the music.
No, we haven't. Yeah. I think it works. I honestly can't remember it that well, but I thought that it worked in context of the film. That's one there I'd love to go back and listen to some, like kind of put all 5 of them together and just listen to it and see how it all feels.
It's very threatening.
Well, I guess that would make sense then.
I'm telling you, this guy has done some amazing work. And if you look at this as sort of the beginning of his, it's not actually fair to call it the beginning. He'd been doing some work before then, before Underworld. But I think it really defined a style for him that he really came into much later. I was a big fan. One of my very favorite scores, and I think it was The Girl Next Door, and that was one of those movies that had a great score and a great soundtrack. He also came back and did Crank, which I think has another fascinating score. But then he got into TV and did Sleeper Cell in 2005-2006, which was fantastic. Not only a fantastic score, but complemented an amazing show. And with all of this stuff from, he did a lot of video games. Then he came back to Fear the Walking Dead, Halt and Catch Fire, Fear the Walking Dead miniseries, Passage, and Wisdom of the Crowds, and back to back, great televised scores. It's just they're like right up there with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross for me.
I don't think I've heard any of those. I've not seen those shows, and so my I enjoy some of his scores. I enjoy some of the like film scores that he's done, but just like all that other stuff, I'm very blank on. I never saw The Girl Next Door. I think Shoot 'Em Up might be the one that really stands out for me as something that I have definitely seen. And then other than that, I'm looking through his stuff. I'm like, oh, have I seen much of his? Maybe not.
Let's talk about sequels and remakes. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we need to, since this series is really all about the sequels of this franchise. And we'll talk about, where it's going as it gets to the end. But, it definitely is one that is designed, like you build a world like this and people want to kind of dip back into it. I haven't seen anything where it said they wrote, it's not like The Matrix where they wrote this with potential for more stories. I feel like they kind of planned on just, let's do something really cool. And then that was kind of it.
And you know what? As it goes on, you can feel that. I am so curious to see what you think of it. And I'm curious to watch them again in order because, as I told you last week, I've never seen the rest of them in order. I watched them all crazy out of order and years apart. So I have no sense of what the story is actually supposed to be. So this will be great. How to do an award season? To get anything?
This film had 1 win and 10 other nominations over at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. Scott Speedman won the Cinescape Genre Face of the Future Award. Wow. That is an award title for ya. That just... the Cinescape Genre Face of the Future.
We should all be so lucky. You know what?
Right?
You have the podcast Face of the Future, Andy.
Well, my thank you. The other nominations at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, we had it nominated for Best Horror Film, but it did not win. It lost to, what did it lose to? It lost to 28 Days Later.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that for sure. At the best makeup, it lost to Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Kate Beckinsale was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Uma Thurman in Kill Bill Volume 1. So, it did okay for itself, but not it's up against some other things. It's a genre thing. Over at the Golden Schmoes Awards,
at least it's up against the right stuff, right? It's not like on. This is not buried in the Razzies.
Exactly. Although, Pete, now that you say that, Kate Beckinsale was nominated over at the Golden Schmoes. We've talked about the Golden Schmoes. I just hate even bringing this up, and I feel like I shouldn't. But Best TNA of the Year. Kate Beckinsale was nominated, lost to Keira Knightley in Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And then it had a few other nominations, but those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah.
I don't know if I call the Golden Schmoes the big ones.
Nope. All right.
Yeah.
Well, now we have to talk about the box office.
Well, Len Wiseman kicked off this vampire werewolf franchise with a budget of $22 million, which is $30.5 million in today's dollars. The movie opened September 19th, 2003, opposite Secondhand Lions, The Fighting Temptations, Cold Creek Manor, Anything Else, and the limited opening of Bubba Hotep. There's getting some Mummy into the mix that weekend. This one handily took the #1 spot, bumping out Robert Rodriguez's Once Upon a Time in Mexico. The film went on to earn $51.9 million domestically and $43.7 million internationally, for a grand total of $133 million in today's dollars and adjusted profit per finished minute of $847,000. That was a surefire sign of success, and all the studio needed to say, "Let's make a sequel."
That was great. You did that like in character. You were a real studio head. Well done. I'm glad we started this thing. I'm glad we are in it. We are invested in the world of Underworld, and we're very excited about it. And that means that now we've done the anchor show, and we just have to see what comes out when we start peeling the onion. Just start peeling the onion. For now, we should probably take it to the mat.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies we've talked about on this show. If you swipe over in your show notes and tap the word Flickchart, It will take you directly to this movie in the Flickchart catalog where you can add it to your own list and see how it stacks up against ours.
This is one of those where sometimes I'm going to have a hard time defining the line of, I'm probably going to watch this more, but the other film is definitely a better one.
Yeah. Yeah, I struggle with that too.
I guess we'll see how it lands. Maybe it will land like Selene does in the first few minutes of this film. Like a cat.
Elegantly and in rubber.
Underworld or Il Postino, the postman.
Oh, Andy. I know.
I mean, I find Il Postino, the postman, to be a very magical film.
Yeah.
It's a very sweet, simple, light film, but I just feel like the world building in Underworld is really spectacular, and I'd probably watch it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Underworld.
Underworld or Do the Right Thing.
Seriously, it's Do the Right Thing.
You know how last week I said Crawl over Do the Right Thing because, sometimes people are crazy and they do things like that. Well, I'm going to say Do the Right Thing this week.
God, what a relief.
Underworld or Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead. Underworld or Hero. Some Zhang Yimou. I'll say Hero.
I will also say Hero.
But wow, what a pairing of two films that are just beautiful to look at.
I agree with that.
In different ways.
Yeah.
Underworld or Being John Malkovich? Being John Malkovich for
John
me.
Malkovich, yeah.
Underworld or Lethal Weapon?
Lethal Weapon, but then I go watch the Fat Man trailer again and I get so mad. Makes me want to pick
Just
Underworld.
don't go watch the Fat Man trailer
But
again.
then how will I send my message?
Easy.
How will I send a message that I'm mad?
Lethal Weapon takes that one. Underworld or The Natural? Oh, The Natural.
The Natural.
Underworld or High Noon?
High Noon.
High Noon. Underworld or Creepshow?
Creepshow.
Creepshow. Well, that puts Underworld in spot 239 on our chart. 239 out of 478 films. Wow, it kind of landed smack dab in the middle at a 50%.
Fascinating. How did it do on yours?
It did better than that. It landed on my chart in spot 1036 out of 4506, which is a 77%.
Did a lot better on yours. Mine ended up at 652 out of 1474, and that puts it at a 56%.
Wow.
Yeah, so I agree more with us than I do with you. It turns out it was just hard. It ran up against a lot of movies that I just really struggled to compare it against, and I think it's the silliness sometimes of Flickchart's pairings that I end up ranking it against movies that it just won't beat. So it can't climb too high into that top half. If I go by the algorithm over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel, this should be a 3-star film. It's 3 stars. It's 3 stars that can be swayed very, very easily. I could go up from there.
I mean, I'm starting a little higher than that. I'm a 3.5 and a heart. I do find it to be just a fun time. It's a fun world to be in. I don't know if it's a great film, but because it's very soap operatic, and to that end, it's like I buy into all of that, and I just jump in and I revel in all of the kind of the reveals and the silliness of the whole thing, and I just have a great time. So starting it off at 3.5.
So here's a question: you're gonna leave it at 3.5 and a heart?
Yeah,
because I don't want to be the one to bring the average down. So I'm going to push mine up to 3.5. Not on this movie. I don't want to be that guy. I'm not that guy. So I'm gonna go for 3.5 and a heart with you because you said so.
Okay. All right. Well, that's where we sit. 3.5 stars and a heart.
All right.
Over at letterboxd.com.
That sounds great. I'm real happy about that. And now that we've done Underworld, we've gotten that one on the list. Do you want to talk just a little bit about where we go from here?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, we're going to Underworld Evolution, which is 3 years later. They keep this almost every 3 years. So Evolution in 2006, and then Rise of the Lycans in 2009, Awakening in 2012, and then there's a 4-year gap for that 5th film, which is Underworld Blood Wars. So, but next time it'll be Underworld Evolution.
I am really excited just to see how in quick succession the effects of the movie in the series improve over time. I think this is an area where it could either really get really great or not, depending on how much money they throw at it. And I think there's a lot of promise at this point in the series. There's a lot of promise.
Well, and I'm curious because my recollection of that one, again, I haven't seen it probably since 2009 or 2006, is that, I mean, it pretty much kicks off right after the second one ends. Like, that's my recollection of it, is that it really kind of is an immediate sequel. Yeah. So I'm curious to find that out and kind of jump into that. And I'm curious where they go, like in the future, is there more time between them? So I don't know. But that's what we're doing next time. So when the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Amazon giveth, Andrew.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, they do. I didn't go to Amazon, though. I didn't. I skipped it.
Oh.
I wanted to see what the kids would say. I got to see, with these horror movies, it's so great to see what the kids say, especially when you compare it to what the parents say and what Common Sense Media says, right? So I went to see what the kids say, and Common Sense says that this is a 3-star movie based on their expert reviews, and that it is good for ages 17 and up. Would you agree that this is 17 and up?
What was the rating of it? Now that you say that, I'm like, was it R? I honestly don't. It was R. Is it terrible to say that I am just kind of like not a good judge of that at this point? Because I'm like,
did you watch it with your kids?
I watched so many movies. I didn't. Okay. No. I guess I remembered that in the context of when you pair lycans and vampires and there's fighting, and I just remember Selene's always shooting things, so I just was like, inevitably there's going to be a lot of blood and violence, so I probably skip it with the kids.
Well, and we didn't talk about the end, and I think this is why the movie it dropped some stars for me. The big final battle between the lycans and the vampires, it's all with guns, right? And I know it's all good, but it became so pedestrian, like just watching red shirts come in and get ambushed and then get ambush upon others. It was just not a very creative thing. It was just shooting and falling down. So there's a long stretch where that's nonsense.
And one guy with a whip.
And the guy with a whip.
All I could say when that happened, I'm like, a whip?
Why did you pull
against
out
a
your
werewolf?
Whip? You
really?
Idiot.
That's what you're going to use?
Yeah. Terrible. So
maybe he was a lion tamer at one point.
That is a unique set of skills that crosses the werewolf lion barrier. That's great, right. Andy. That is a directly transferable set of skills. All right. So I went with the kids. The kids say their aggregate reviews, there are 25 reviews from the kids, and the kids say this should be rated for 14 and up. The parents, interestingly, happen to agree, although the parents like the movie less than the kids do. Parents give it an average of 3 stars, the kids average of 4 stars. But they all agree that 14 years old is fine to watch this movie. And the reviews of the kids actually they actually support that. Titles like, "Dude, seriously, man up a bit," 4 stars. "This movie is great. You're overreacting."
Wow.
we do have a 13-year-old who says this movie is one of my favorites, but it has its problems. The gore and action was point perfect, and comparing it to movies like Kill Bill and Blade, it really isn't that bad. Most of the shooting scenes weren't headshots, and there was only one act of cold blood in the whole movie. During the opening scene, Selene repeatedly shoots a man to death. However, the shot pans onto Selene's face, not the guy. Unless you're the kind of kid who cries once a bullet's shot, then this film should be handled really quite easily by most my age. Although some of the acting was poor and the one-liners were pretty clunky, The swearing scenes were usually satisfying. About 30 minutes into the film, Michael shouts, "What the F is going on?" after a man was shot 5 times and pulls all the bullets out in a matter of seconds. The music was usually really effective, and the transformations didn't look scary at all. One really awesome transformation scene did occur, and that may scare some, but the overpowering music will compensate for that. All right, there were some science horror and post-torture scenes, but the magic of fast forward exists. No sex, not like the sequel. I mean, the swearing was so minor compared to 2016's Vacation would result in a 2-second beatdown. The film is 15 years old, and it really has dated. If you've seen Blade at 11, then Underworld is a must-see.
Wow.
I know. Again, Andy, 13 years old, I eat my hat. Anyway, I think the kids speak for themselves. They all think that Common Sense Media is overselling the gore. And they've heard enough in high school, or in middle school.
Damn you, Common Sense.
Yeah. So
apparently
how did Amazon fare?
Well, I have a 1-star from Sky who says, "It seems like the English are even better at making worse movies than Hollywood, especially this period. Where's Jackman? Seems like a 3-hour hair gel commercial with a car commercial thrown in for good luck. Nothing going on here."
Where's Jackman? What? That's Hugh, right? You were talking about Hugh Jackman?
I suppose. And it's odd that they say that, I don't know. I'm just so curious about this because it seems like the English are even better at making worse movies than Hollywood. It's like, that just because of Kate? Because Len Wiseman and his co-writers are all Americans. Right. So I don't know. I assume that they're just saying that because of her.
Well, Speedman's a Brit too. Do you know that?
I thought he's Canadian.
Well, he was born in England to Scottish parents.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Did he move to Canada? Why do he grew up in Canada.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah. See?
Yeah, but I'll bet.
Yeah. I always put him in my head as a Canadian.
Born September 1, 1970. We didn't talk about birthdays. Speedman's 75. September 1st, 75. Born in London, UK.
Yeah.
Now,
Kate
did you want to talk about Kate?
Born a day after me. A day.
And look what you've achieved.
Hospital together. I'm just saying. Wow. Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchase is made through our links. Give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We covered a lot of great movies that were adapted from other material in Season 10.
Our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals is where listeners can purchase the source material behind all our adapted film discussions. It helps support the show at no extra cost when you buy through our links.
In our foreign language Best Picture nominees series, we looked at several adaptations, including Z, The Postman Il Postino, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Letters from Iwo Jima.
We hit the high seas with In the Heart of the Sea from Nathaniel Philbrick's nonfiction book for our Aquatic Killers series.
Definitely a weaker entry in that series.
I bet the book is better.
Oh, me too.
Member bonus episodes featured adaptations like Gone Girl, The Russia House, Ivanhoe, The Hot Rock, The Big Heat, and Naked Lunch.
Oliver Stone brought not just original stories, but also adaptations like Conan the Barbarian, Scarface, Year of the Dragon, 8 Million Ways to Die, Talk Radio, and Born on the 4th of July.
Mary Herron's disturbingly insightful American Psycho was adapted from the Bret Easton Ellis book.
You like Huey Lewis in the News?
Oh my God, it even has a watermark.
And of course, more Stephen King with The Mist, The Green Mile, and The Shawshank Redemption for our King a la Darabont series.
Find links to all of these books and more adapted films on our Originals page. That's thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports our show.
Get the full list of books that we've talked about and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.